Warning, this video contains spoilers for the Devilman series. And this video contains scenes of blood and graphic violence. Viewer discretion is advised. Devilman, the classic 1970s manga by Go Nagai. For those who don't know, it was an extremely influential manga that has helped in shaping many popular manga and anime series. It was a very unique manga for its time, combining horror, tragedy, and apocalyptic themes, which all were not very common in mainstream manga at the time. The story bends what seems like your typical monster fighting anime into a bleak story about humanity, fear, and the collapse of society. Go Nagai is also famous for creating Mazinger Z, one of the first Super Robot series, and helped define the mecha genre. You probably already know Mazinger if you played Super Robot Wars. Oh, and Getter Robo too. Nagai also made Violence Jack and Demon Lord Dante, which are similar to Devilman, but make it a little crazier. Nowadays, Devilman, while still widely beloved and popular, is more of a cult classic these days. Devilman is about a high school student named Akira Fudo, who gains the power of a demon named Amon, with the help of his childhood friend named Ryo Asuka, to battle demons disguised within human society. The series is known for its dark graphic themes revolving around human nature and whether humans are on the same level as demons, how people are succumbed to cruelty and fear, love and compassion versus raw strength and survival of the fittest, inner conflict and identity, manipulation and free will, and a terrifying fate. Given how popular Devilman is, naturally it had some anime adaptations. The earliest was a TV anime by Toei in the 70s. It's a weird children's cartoon that wildly deviates from the actual story of Devilman and is pretty much its own thing. No one really remembers this outside the opening and stuff. And later in the late 80s they had two OVAs, Devilman the Birth and Devilman the Demon Bird. They were relatively faithful adaptations of the early parts of the manga, the first two volumes. Devilman the Birth covered the world when it was normal, who Akira was at the beginning as a timid shy boy who struggled to fight back, and introduced Miki, his close friend and love interest, and Ryo. This covers when Akira transforms into Devilman for the first time. The second OVA, The Demon Bird, covers when Akira has changed into Devilman and he fights Jinmen, the turtle thing with human faces, and Sarene. These OVAs are fantastic and are a great way to experience a story, if they were finished. Sadly, the rest of the OVAs never got made, and I think they became an audio drama instead. There's Devilman Crybaby, which is the most recent, and it was a Netflix series. This one actually fully adapted the manga story, although in a more modernish way. It has a more modern setting. This is the most popular adaptation and is heavily praised, though some may not like the direction Crybaby goes for. I'm pretty neutral on Crybaby, but I might get off track. Maybe I'll talk more about it later. However, this one adaptation I want to talk about today is this one relatively obscure OVA, Amon the Apocalypse of Devilman. This adapts the end of the Devilman manga story. Well, actually no. It's actually based on a spin-off manga titled Amon the Dark Side of Devilman, which is a darker alternate take that deviates from the original ending of the manga, which is already pretty damn dark as it is. So yeah, this OVA is not a clean adaptation of the original story. This is based on a spin-off, but it's kind of a loose adaptation of the manga too, as the manga was still early in its run when this OVA was being made. I mean very early, like only the first volume was even out yet. This OVA follows the chaos of demons being out in the city, and Ryo revealing demons exist among humanity, causing everyone to panic and go insane. I have some mixed feelings on this OVA, but you will see why later. Before I talk about this OVA, I want to briefly go over the story of Devilman in detail. If you already know all of this and just want to hear me talk about the OVA already, feel free to jump to this timestamp. Explaining the characters and key events that happen, as the OVA needs all the context for it to make sense. For the beginning stuff, I will mainly be going over the first two Devilman OVAs, as they very faithfully adapt the first two volumes of the manga and serve as a really good baseline for what the story is about. Devilman the Birth. This covers the first volume of the manga, where we are introduced to Akira Fudo, a teenage boy with a somewhat timid personality. He's a gentle guy who doesn't want to cause unnecessary fighting, but also has a side of braveness. A group of bullies attack him, but he doesn't fight back. His lifelong friend Miki intervenes. Miki is an extremely close person to Akira who he deeply cares about. She's kind of an emotional anchor to him, and both of them have lived together. Akira is living with her family after his parents died, and his parents are close friends with her parents. Miki in most adaptations is portrayed as this kind and caring girl who deeply cares about Akira and worries about him. Both of them live together. In the manga, Miki was originally portrayed as brash and short-tempered at first, but I generally prefer her character in the adaptations, but I digress. Ryo meets Akira and takes him with. He's a cold, calculating guy, and he's a very close childhood friend to Akira and has a strong relationship with him. He is someone Akira deeply trusts, and both of them deeply trust each other. Ryo is a little crazy and unhinged. He's shady and mysterious, and he does some wild stuff and acts strange at times, such as carrying weapons without warning and other things. But he also deeply cares about Akira as a friend, and he isn't a bad person. He reveals that his father killed himself and then he changed it to something else, but left a lot of research behind. He tells Akira about demons, which are a race of beings that existed during the prehistoric times, but were seemingly wiped out during an ice age. However, they're actually hiding underground, and want revenge on humans for taking over the earth. They have become more powerful than humans and have the ability to merge with them. Ryo wants Akira to take the risk of merging with the demons as the only way to fight them, and Akira is willing to do so. Ryo sees Akira as someone uniquely compassionate, so that's why he's doing this to him. Ryo performs a ritual by taking Akira to an underground club party called Sabbath. The Sabbath party was actually set up by Ryo as demons are attracted to violence, fear, and human corruption. Ryo intentionally caused chaos by attacking others to trigger the demons revealing themselves. He orchestrated the entire thing, which causes demons to come out and merge with people, including Akira. Normally when a demon merges with a human, the demon completely takes over. But in rare cases, if a human has a strong enough will and heart, they can overpower the demon instead. When that happens, a Devilman is created. So normally, when demons merge with humans, they take over entirely, but Akira is different. He instead takes over the demon, becomes Devilman. He has the body of a demon but retains his human heart. Akira kills all the demons and transforms back into normal, but he looks a little different. He merged with the demon Amon, but despite that, Akira still retains a normal human personality. But his personality changed a little. He's tougher, more brash and impulsive. However, one key thing remains. He's still a strong and kind person who wants to help humanity. Despite being brooding and violent at times, he's still a human at heart with good intentions. He took entire control over Amon the demon, and uses his powers for good. He's compassionate, sensitive, protective of others, and someone who genuinely wants to save people. Even after merging with Amon, he's still fighting for humanity. What makes Akira unique isn't just his strength, it's his empathy. He feels other people's pain very deeply, which is exactly why he's able to control Amon instead of being consumed by him. The second OVA, the Demon Bird, is also very faithful to the manga, although it changes a few things. Some events happen in a slightly different order, and certain scenes play out differently, but overall the major story beats and important moments are still there. Later on, Akira begins fighting other demons. One of them is Jinmen, a turtle-like demon with human faces covering his shell. Said faces belong to those of the people he killed. And among them is Akira's own mother. Akira's parents died when traveling through the caves in the Himalayas, and Jinmen killed them. This makes the fight especially disturbing because the faces on his shell can still talk and scream in agony. Akira hesitates to attack at first, because destroying Jinmen would mean destroying the remains of innocent people, but ultimately he has to overcome that hesitation and kills Jinmen a single powerful blow. These battles are not just physical fights, they're also testing Akira emotionally. Not long after, demons begin attacking Akira at his home. One of the strongest among them is the demon bird Serene. Serene wants Amon back from Akira and despises him for siding with humans. The two fight in a brutal battle. Serene actually injures Akira severely, ripping one of his arms off and forcing him back into his human form. Technically she defeats him in that moment, but before she can finish him off, she ends up dying during the fight after Akira redirects one of her attacks back towards her. Throughout these battles, Ryo and Akira continue working together closely. Ryo seems strangely calm about everything that's happening. In fact, he almost appears to enjoy fighting demons and watching the chaos unfold. Meanwhile, the situation around the world is getting worse. More and more people begin transforming into demons, often without even realizing it themselves. Innocent people are killed and demons start appearing in large numbers, hiding among humans. Eventually, the existence of demons becomes public knowledge. Fear begins spreading everywhere, people start accusing each other of being demons, suspicion grows, violence increases, and society slowly begins to collapse. You're not just seeing the apocalypse happen all at once, you're watching it unfold piece by piece, victim by victim. Demons aren't the only danger in the world, it's also people themselves. Humanity slowly drawing into chaos. So now we're on to the OVA, and this OVA requires a lot of context. I do not recommend watching this OVA at all, unless you deeply know the story of Devilman and know the source material really well. And if you sorta know what happens in the Amon manga. Okay, so the OVA begins with about a minute of text explaining the situation. It talks about demons wanting their Earth back from humans and how humanity is slowly falling to fear and paranoia as the existence of demons becomes widely known. After that, we see a fairly normal looking Tokyo at night. A young child is running through the streets while being chased by a man. The man suddenly transforms into a demon and attacks. It is then revealed that the child is actually a Devilman, and another Devilman named Miko attacks and fights him. Miko, as a supporting character, appears later in the manga. She was a teenage girl who unwillingly was merged with a demon and became a Devilman, which caused her disfigured body and allows her to shoot acid from her tits. Just wanted to explain that bit of context. She then became friends with Akira and joined him. Miko temporarily destroys the demon, Miko temporarily defeats the demon, and apparently the child is actually being used as bait to lure the demons out in the open. The demon gets back up and quickly gains the upper hand and brutally defeats Miko. Just when things start looking bad, Akira Fudo arrives and destroys the demon with ease. Yumi wa?
大丈夫です。
そうか。It's a pretty straightforward action opening and establishes that Akira is actively hunting demons. It's pretty damn cool, and that's all I have to say, really. You can tell that Akira is very unfazed and he's very brooding. Like, these demons are just a common occurrence now, like, just another one of these damn bastards. After this, the story cuts to Miki Makimura on the bus arriving home. And we see a guy robbing a convenience store, some people kicking a guy, and an angry guy on the bus because his stop was missed. And they're all accusing each other of being demons, I guess. This guy is really angry at the driver and he's seemingly beating him up. Well, if the passengers don't care, then I guess I shouldn't either. They're just walking off, going on with their day.
ただいま。おかえり。ねえタレちゃん、アキラくんから何か連絡あった？ないよ。そう。3日もどうしちゃったんだろう。
恋する乙女って大変だね。
バーカ。ねえお父さんたちは？
悪魔狩りだって。3丁目の佐藤さん、いやいや出てったよ。
仕方ないわよ。だって行かなきゃうちが疑われちゃうんだもの。
Miki, what the fuck are you talking about? Are you telling your little brother to go demon hunting with his parents and get killed? You know he can't do shit, and what the hell are you going to do? Sit your ass in your room like worrying about Akira? Okay, maybe it's just a really terrible fan subs. Yeah, these subtitles are terrible. These are like really old fan subs and they reek of Xbox Live edginess. Like constant F-bombs and unnecessary vulgarity. I'm sure there's a better fan sub out there, but that doesn't really change much. We see her looking at a photo of her and Akira, and then we see Ryo Asuka appearing on television making a public announcement. He reveals to the world that demons exist and shows footage of Akira transforming into Devilman and killing them. The scene is pretty visceral and graphic. Hell, he rips off one of the demon's boobs and eats them. Raw.
Akira 兄ちゃんがお姉ちゃん大変。アキラ兄ちゃんが大変だよ。お姉ちゃん
Huh?
Tareちゃんタレちゃんお父さんお母さん
Sit tight. I'm gonna be here for a while. Yes, you saw how violent and graphic that was, but I'll be honest. As brutal and violent as Miki and her little brother's death were, here's the problem. They failed to emotionally land for me. Let me break this down. Her little brother Tari, he's shocked seeing Akira transform on television, and then the next scene he's in, he's shot by a random arrow by guys that came out of absolutely nowhere with zero build-up. Well, it's graphic, it's so anticlimactic. And for Miki, when she dies in the original manga, it was devastating. Because we lived with her. We've seen her personality, her strength, her kindness, her normalcy. She was the last hope Akira had. His last tie to humanity. But in this OVA, she's barely even a character. But is purely symbolic. Which kinda does something, but it's not as effective. She's only here for like 1 or 2 small scenes and she barely does anything in them. How am I supposed to feel bad for her if I barely even know or care about her, what she does in the story at all? She doesn't even feel meaningful or present at all until like her little brother dies. Miki isn't just Akira's girlfriend. She's his emotional anchor, his connection to humanity, the embodiment of compassion in a collapsing world. In the original Devilman, Miki's death works because we spent real time with her. She feels human, not symbolic. She represents hope and normalcy. Her relationship with Akira is established and lived in. So when she's killed, not by demons but by terrified humans, it's not just violent. It's tragic. It's a statement about humanity collapsing under fear, which I think they also messed up here too. The scene is visually devastating, but it's emotionally underdeveloped. Their deaths come out of absolutely nowhere and zero build-up. None of these characters have any meaningful screen time for their death or anything that gives us a reason to care about them. And no, a single photo and a single mention that they're step-siblings is usually not enough by itself to fully emotionally anchor a tragedy scene this important. Death is supposed to be one of the most devastating moments in Devilman, but in this OVA, the fact that she doesn't get much screen time or any proper interaction with Akira is another problem. We never get to see in the present time interaction with her and Akira. She's barely given any role in the story for her death, because the tragedy feels shallow, even though the OVA clearly wants it to carry a lot of emotional weight. Yes, the moment itself is shocking and the horror and direction is well done. It does make me feel uncomfortable and tense watching it. The direction, the horror, the atmosphere, the direction and cinematography is really well done. Like when Miki's walking down the stairs, I feel tense watching that. That is well done. The moment is shocking, but the way it happens feels too abrupt. Instead of feeling like the result of society collapsing to paranoia, it comes off as a series of random extreme events happening at once. If you look at the scene alone and isolated, it is very shocking and brutal, but when you look at it how the story builds up to it, it starts to feel very cheap. The OVA relies too much on sudden violence and on proper build-up. So instead of feeling like a devastating turning point, it comes off as shock value without enough emotional foundation. And as for the murderers themselves, in the original story, these were ordinary people turning violent out of fear. Miki's neighbors suspecting everyone of being a demon. Here it feels more like random generic serial killers breaking in and murdering for no reason. That might be shocking on its own, but doesn't evoke the same kind of dread or tragedy that Devilman is going for. It's supposed to feel like society collapsing, not just random violence. You may argue that it's just emphasizing that humans be cruel and terrible, but that's a very basic idea on its own. Any story can fucking tell that. What makes Devilman work is showing how ordinary people come like that, and how fear and paranoia builds over time. And that in the context of this story, they can become worse than demons, who are the supposed bad guy. The OVA does a lot right in terms of horror direction. The violence is graphic, the atmosphere is strong, and Miki's reaction to her brother's death is genuinely well done. This is the only part where she actually shows real human emotion, and it actually feels something. But it's cut so short and she just dies right after, so I feel nothing. But even then, those moments cannot carry the emotional weight on its own. Without enough build-up development beforehand, the scene feels intense in the moment but doesn't hit as hard as they should overall. If you look at the OVA on its own and ask why should I care about these characters, I don't really know how to answer that. We're told that Miki is important, that she means a lot to Akira, but we don't really see enough of their relationship in the present to feel that ourselves. The OVA expects you to care, but doesn't really give you the reasons to. Also, I'm not asking for their entire history. I just think that one or two scenes of them in a deep scene with Akira, literally just this one scene from the manga, and a little teeny bit more to get how these characters would go a long way. I just want one scene in the present, just one scene beforehand that would have done so much. This manga panel right here. Look at how much these manga pages communicate in so little time. Miki Makimura is emotionally vulnerable, she fears losing Akira Fudo, she understands he's changing, and Akira is trying to reassure her. There's intimacy and history between them. There's some dread too, so it actually feels tense. She senses something terrible is coming. Akira still has traces of warmth and humanity. It's all done in a few pages. Notice how these panels humanize both characters simultaneously. Like, you can tell she's a person with fear, intuition, attachment, and emotional awareness. While Akira's trying to hold himself together, he's already slipping away, and Miki's already afraid of losing emotionally before losing physically. That is huge. Miki's death is not just a girl gets murdered brutally. It's the only person who still emotionally reached Akira is gone. And with Amon coming out, it's Akira finally losing the last thing that was tethering him to humanity. For this scene, they had the right ideas, but the problem is the lack of build-up, the pacing, and the way it's staged so abruptly that emotionally it barely even lands or has any time to breathe. Also, for those crazy-ass humans, actually show them becoming the threat. Should show them approaching the house like they do in the damn manga. Don't just make them come out of nowhere. Yes, it does technically work in horror too, but it kind of feels like shock value. Something crucial the manga understands. Fear escalates in stages. Like, rumors spread, people gather, torches appear, the crowd becomes visible, the atmosphere tightens, characters recognize danger, and panic slowly sets in. Only then does violence erupt. The audience gets time to actually emotionally process the situation along with the characters. Just show a few seconds, like, see like silhouettes outside with torches through the windows, like some small yelling, and like Miki hearing noises or something, or people gathering outside, and like someone pounding on the door, and like the characters start becoming more scared. Like, something like that would have helped a lot. That would build suspense, anticipation, claustrophobia, and stuff like that, instead of just sudden intrusion, nightmare shock. Notice how in the manga they feel the actual threat. The threat actually feels like it's there. Like the characters are actively aware of the threat. Before you ask, no, these scenes do not count. Yes, the OVA tries to show society descending into paranoia, but the escalation doesn't feel natural at all. We go from arguments and minor incidents, things you could honestly see in everyday life, to sudden brutal murder. There's no real tipping point. Like, how the hell do we go from robbing a convenience store and an angry guy in public transport to literal child murder? Also, if nobody cares, then why the hell should I care? There's no real tipping point, no moment where things clearly cross the line, so the violence ends up feeling disconnected rather than inevitable. These scenes feel like everyday chaos, not societal collapse. I don't think they properly communicate that humanity's falling under paranoia. Yes, they do accuse each other of being demons, but it doesn't mean anything. They just feel like random street arguments or normal city aggression. They just feel like normal things that could happen in Tokyo, Japan. The escalation is not convincing. The escalation jumps too quickly from paranoia to murder. To be clear, I don't mind the violence and gore at all. That's fine. To be clear, I don't mind the violence and gore at all. I think that's actually great. The problem is disturbing content alone isn't enough to carry the emotional meaning the story wants. A tragedy isn't automatically emotionally effective just because characters die, there's gore, people scream, the music swells, imagery is shocking. Those things can enhance emotion, but they can't replace the emotional groundwork. It just feels like I walked into a movie theater 30 minutes late. The entire issue could have just been fixed by showing one scene of Miki and Akira interacting and talking with each other. Because these scenes barely have any time to breathe, it doesn't feel like the world's collapsing around innocent people. It just feels like the plot mechanically removes these characters just to force tragedy. When I'm watching this, I'm just going like, huh? What the fuck? I'm like, oh no, oh, she's dead, alright. These scenes can be horrifying, but the horror lands way harder when the threat has been escalating clearly, the attack feels tangible, the victim's emotional state is established, the audience has time to anticipate the danger. But here these motherfuckers appear out of fucking nowhere, and we just go from this atmosphere to straight up fucking murder with no build-up. Here's an example of Z scenes where I feel they do much a better job, like with Kamen Rider Kuga. Like, yes, the civilians, you barely know them, or even, they're just pretty much strangers to you. These victims don't feel like any, like nobodies, but the thing is, the danger escalation is clear, the threat is clearly established, the fear feels grounded, the victims feel like recognizable people, the atmosphere tightens, and the violence actually feels socially real, actually feel credible. The OVA just jumps right into nightmare imagery before anything feels tangible before they die. Alright, I think I've been ranting about this for way too long, I need to move on now. Ryo's little broadcast continues and people start going crazy and attacking each other. We now see the societal collapse happening, but the problem is it paced way too fucking fast, and the story has barely any time to breathe that I feel absolutely fucking nothing. So like, okay, humanity's now dead, alright. Without any foundation, everything just feels like shock rather than actual tragedy. And then we see Akira witness Miki's death to the hands of the mob. And then he just tears him apart, and then we see Akira grieving his death. This is really well done, actually. This scene should have me feeling emotional, but the problem is, I don't feel anything for Miki, so like, why should I care about Akira either? Honestly, kinda wish we got to see Akira's past early on, like his hot blood compassionate self. Just a glimpse of that. We already see him pretty brooding and unfazed, that's fine I guess, but seeing who he was beforehand, seeing a more human version of him would hit much harder. He's already exhausted, brooding, emotionally distant, and hardened. Which is, it fits the story chronologically, and that's fine, but the problem is you never emotionally see the contrast. That contrast is extremely important, because instead of it feeling like a genuinely compassionate human being slowly losing everything, it just feels like some sad, edgy demon guy suffers. It makes Akira feel like a generic, traumatized anti-hero. And I think that would have been fixed by just having one or two scenes. We know Akira is someone who's timid but brave, compassionate, protective, emotionally sensitive, but still fundamentally human after becoming Devilman. That humanity is the reason his suffering matters, Miki matters, and Amon matters. I'm just saying, show the other side of him earlier. Like, for example, the scene from the manga where Miki's parents die and Akira feels devastated. Because the people he was trying to protect, the humans, turned on him and did this terrible shit. This man sacrifices humanity physically in order to protect humanity morally. But these people fucked him up. And now humanity is all dead. And then we see Akira sitting down, and then there's a flashback of him and Miki running to school. A couple more of these flashbacks play. And yes, I'll bring it up now. I like the flashbacks. They're They're wholesome, they're well done, like, they tell you what you need to know. But here's the problem. All of these flashbacks are shown to us after Miki is already dead. They're trying to inject emotional context retroactively. They can't replace present tense character building. They feel more like reminders of their past than ever actually showing us the past. I don't mind the flashback scenes, they're nice. But the problem is the flashbacks are doing two jobs at once. One, establishing their relationship, and two, trying to make us mourn it. Which is a lot of emotional weight for just a few short scenes. The moments are touching, but the problem is they feel like condensed emotional shorthand. It's telling us that loss matters, but not letting us really feel why it mattered beforehand. I feel like showing us more of that beforehand, like the scene I mentioned earlier, would have helped a lot. The flashbacks themselves are well done, but they arrive too late and are forced to carry the entire emotional weight of the story, instead of deepening a relationship we've already seen and building up to it. They're trying to create a relationship after tragedy's already happened. They're beautiful moments, but they feel empty and are too brief and late to really land with me. And about the photo, it's cute, it's a neat touch, it's actually doing a lot of narrative work. It tells you Akira and Miki had a close relationship, and it's a good piece of visual storytelling, but it's still symbolic shorthand, not a scene where you actually see the relationship play out. You can keep the photo, but you need more than that. It's just evidence, the actual experience which we need for this moment to really hit. This is the problem with Akira and Miki's relationship in this OVA. All we get about it is like a photo and a brief mention of her asking about him, but that's pretty much all we get. I wish they showed their relationship through actual interactions, not in post-death flashbacks. Yes, they show a couple of these flashbacks, and some of them are genuinely great. They show their chemistry, their bond, and why she mattered to him. But the problem is that all these moments come after her death. Instead of building that connection beforehand, the OVA tries to create emotional weight retroactively. These scenes feel like they should have been shown earlier, because as they are now, they're doing too much work too late. Again, this issue would have been easily solved if they just showed one scene of them together in the present time before she died, of them interacting with each other. That would have been one small, very easy fix. And when Miki's looking at the photo of Akira, we don't even see her face or reaction, so it doesn't really convey anything emotionally. Like, a single shot of her face when she's looking at the photo would do so much.
Akira-sama!
どうした？
デビルマン軍団偵察部隊がデーモンの奴らに襲われています。セイロスというやつがリーダーらしいです。
セロス。わかった。すぐ向かおう。
はい、待ってください。アキラ様、お体は大丈夫なのですか？
何を言っている？問題ない。さあ。
ビルマン不動明。もしお前がデーモン軍団に加わるのであれば命は助けてやる。どうする不動明。
不動明か。
Yes, Amon just bursted right out of Akira. But this raises so many questions. This, for one, never happens in the original manga. We don't even see Amon at all in the original manga. We just know he's a demon that Akira takes control of. Because normally how Devilman works is a human merges with a demon, but the human dominates the demon's will and has full control over them. So the demon is pretty much... the human has full control over the demon. Personality completely dominating. Normally, demons just wipe out the human's consciousness completely, and uses human bodies as skin suit to blend into human society. But people like Akira are the exception. The Devilmen are humans who possess an incredibly strong will or pure innocent hearts that can overpower the demon spirit during the fusion. So, Amon bursting out of Akira is a little weird. Was it caused by his guilt and grief over Miki's death? The OVA tries to imply that Akira lost control over Amon after Miki's terrible death, with Akira being emotionally shattered so Amon can take full control. That idea is actually pretty cool, but the problem is the internal struggle before the fight begins is never clearly established. We see one crack of it, but like, how did that happen? Story never really shows Amon trying to break free from Akira earlier, or any times Akira is struggling internally before any of this. So I'm like, how the hell does this even happen? I wish they showed some cracks earlier or some stuff that happened, because like, Miki's death alone doesn't seem like that would cause Akira to lose his old control. It was the last straw in one of many terrible events that was happening. And I think showing Miki and her little brother die first kind of weakens the narrative. Because their deaths were the final straw, the last hope Akira had, in a world that's already going haywire. I clearly get what they're trying to do, that Akira's grief and despair weakened his control over Amon, and that he broke free, and that Amon represents everything Akira failed to suppress. We never really saw any signs of breakage before Miki's death. And the Devilman lore already established that Akira had full control, so this just feels weird. And I think more scenes of Akira earlier, seeing terrible things happen, would have allowed some parts where he can show him cracking. I'm just saying they should have put some small hints of this, given that this is a brand new thing that never happened in the manga. I mean the original 1972 manga. And for what happens in the ending of the original Devilman manga. That naked guy with angel wings, that is Satan. And he takes the form of a young boy named Ryo Asuka. Yes, the blonde guy on the news. Ryo is a young boy who actually died early in the manga, before we even see him on screen. And Satan took over his body and took over his memories. And Satan wanted to get revenge on the earth because of what they did to the demons, with God wiping out the demons 2 million years ago. He used Akira. He used him to transform into Devilman. Not for any good heroic intentions, but to be the last human remaining because he's the only human he loves. And after Miki's death in the manga, the two fight. Giant world-ending devastating duel, with Ryo/Satan winning. He won, but then he realized that he did the very same thing God did to the demons. He was so upset with what God did to the demons, and what he did to humanity was no better. Realizing the grave mistake he made, and the fact he also killed Akira too. Akira is now dead too. The one person he cared about is now dead. He won, but at what cost? He repeated the same tragedy. And also him revealing on the news that Akira as a Devilman was supposed to be one of the most devastating events in the manga. Because everyone saw it, Miki saw it, even Akira himself saw it. And we see his reaction to it. Ryo pretty much snitched on him. He made humanity turn on him. But alright, I think I'm getting sidetracked. Notice how the manga treats this reveal with a lot more weight than just look how gory and graphic it is. Just some food for thought. Now we're here in the next 7 minutes, which are focused around Amon. I'll say, these scenes do a really good job showing how powerful and brutal he is. Showing that he's a ruthless monster. As he's shredding through demons. He even throws a fucking train through one of them. And he straight up eats the child from earlier. Yeah, graphic. I know. Now I've come to a point where I need to address maybe I'm a tad bit desensitized to like blood and gore and extreme violence, even if it involves children. It can still shock me, but like, you need to do more than just the violence alone. Because I've seen it in countless anime, like Gundam Seed Destiny, where the first episode is Shin Asuka's family getting brutally killed in an accident from collateral damage because the Gundam shot a giant laser, and his little sister around the same age is fucking murdered. You see in the original Gundam Seed, where you can even see a character's insides if they explode. And don't even get me started on Elfenlied. That show can get pretty wild. Oh, and the many 90s OVAs. Not gonna lie, I'm more scared of my video getting age restricted, and I show a lot of this violence uncensored. Because censoring it would be dishonest. As cool to watch and as graphic it is, these scenes kinda drag. It's mostly just Amon fighting these random demons that look like Kamen Rider Ultraman rejects. And while it does look stunning, it doesn't really do much for me.
Satan. 俺ははめられたってわけだな。不動明って人間一人を生かすために過当な人間などに体を乗っ取られたこの屈辱、この怒り、思い知るがいい。
アモン、お前はまだ気づいていないのか。いや、気づいているのではないか。不動明がまだ完全に死んでいないということを。アキラ、目を覚ませ、アキラ！
アキラくん？何をぼーっとしておるのじゃ、変なアキラくん。
ミキ。
で、さっきの話なんだけど、どうしたらいいと思う？ミキちゃん悩んじゃうのよね。困ったわ。ねえ、お主はどう思う？
なんだっけ？
やっぱりまた聞いてないな。
待ってくれよ、ミキ。ミキちゃん、ミキ姫。ここは。
私は魔女よ。食べるな。
危ない、ミキ。ミキ
What is Miki doing? Why is she trying to fight these 5 guys who are armed with this tiny ass knife? Is she stupid? This flashback scene. I think the idea of it's fine. It goes from a normal school interaction to Akira remembering her death through distorted trauma, which works well. But they fumbled the bag on this one part. Notice how Miki is trying to act tough. She does this in the manga too. But here's why it works in the manga and not here. In the manga, yeah, Miki is shown fighting back and actually trying to defend herself. But the difference is the manga lets her humanity show through. She tries to save Brave and defend herself, but as the mob closes in, she slowly loses her composure and becomes genuinely terrified. You can feel her realizing that she can't stop what's happening. These were once Miki's everyday neighbors that are now turning against each other. Notice how Miki slowly realizes that humans have become monstrous. And she goes from, yeah, I'm a witch, don't underestimate me, to slowly, no, I'm not a witch. Notice that her confidence is slowly disappearing as the mob gets more violent. She slowly becomes more terrified. In the OVA, she mostly just acts tough with a knife, and then gets killed almost immediately. So instead of feeling like a tragic breakdown of someone trying to stay strong in an impossible situation, it comes off more as sudden shock value. The manga gives that moment of progression, bravery turning into helpless fear, from brave girl with the knife to terrified human being about to die. And that extra emotional step makes her feel much more real and tragic. Real people can try to act tough while still being terrified. Contradiction is what makes the manga scene so emotionally believable. She's trying to stay brave and stay rational, but then she slowly realizes she's powerless and then fear takes over. What makes her feel like an actual person trapped in an impossible situation. But in the OVA, we never see that, so it just kind of makes her look stupid. Her being eventually terrified and stop being able to fight does not make her weak. It makes her feel human, because she tried to stay brave, but she was unable to fight back. Bravery only matters if we see it fail. If a character acts brave and dies instantly, the audience barely processes bravery, but if they resist, try to reason, hold themselves together, begin losing confidence, start panicking, realizing they're doomed, then the tragedy lands. Show some small stuff like Miki's confidence wavering, her tripping over and backing away, realizing the mob won't listen, calling, screaming for Akira's help, and trying to deny what's happening. That would have done so much. The OVA just makes her look like an idiot. Courage only means something when the character is actually afraid. Miki does try to defend herself like this against school bullies earlier in the manga, but the difference is these are delinquent bullies who are not meant to be taken seriously. And she admits to Akira that she was actually scared. I know what's going on in the scene, but the problem is I feel emotionally detached from it. Adding with all the other issues going on, I'm more focused on Miki's attractive feet and toes on a lick. Yes, I just exposed myself to having a foot fetish. Better than a decapitation fetish, I guess.
目障りなんだよ。これを見ろ。探してたんだろ。
なぜそんなものを見せる？
貴様と戦い、今度こそ全てを消し去る。
そんなに戦いたいなら戦ってやる。
And now we're on to the Akira and Amon fight, the main dish of this OVA. This may be a shock to say, but the last 10 minutes of this OVA, are genuinely fantastic. Akira and Amon fight in this very Dragon Ball Z-esque fight scene with death metal music, and it's really damn good. The animation and choreography is really well done. It's symbolically interesting and very intense. It's pretty much externalizing Akira's internal struggle. Human compassion versus demonic rage. Where Amon is rage, instinct, and destruction, Akira is grief, compassion, and restraint. The Akira versus Amon fight is actually one of the strongest ideas in this OVA. It represents Akira's humanity struggling against pure demonic instinct. The whole scene is raw and intense. And when Akira is slowly about to lose, we see a little flashback. We see this little scene where he's in an empty classroom, where he feels guilt for all the pain he caused to Miki and her family, and he blames himself for her death. And she forgives him without saying a single word, after giving him a kiss. This scene is really damn good.
Miki, 俺はミキ
貴様、泣いているのか。女のために。まだ立ち上がる力があるのか。
俺は人間であることを捨てた。だが人間の心は捨ててはいない。お前にこの俺の気持ちはわかるまい。もう俺はお前に負けることはない。
笑わせてくれる。今とどめを刺してくれるわ。なんだ。
These scenes are really damn good. It really shows who Akira is as a character. And I kind of wish we got to see more of this. Because Akira throughout most of this OVA is mostly just suicidal. Which is fine in the context, but we don't really get to see much of his actual character beforehand. The fight continues and Akira now has the upper hand. He is now reclaiming himself. He feels very human here. And that Akira's humanity is what makes him strong. They capture the themes of Devilman really well here, actually. Amon starts to lose and Akira starts going ora ora on him. And then Akira sees Ryo and he walks past him without saying a word. I actually really like this ending. It can be interpreted in many different ways. How I interpret it is that Akira is done with Ryo's shit and he cut ties with him. Friendship cut to an end. Ryo manipulated and used him, so I completely get it. And now, my final thoughts. Amon the Apocalypse of Devilman is a really strange adaptation. It has a lot going for it. The animation is intense, the atmosphere is brutal, and some of the ideas it explores with Amon are genuinely interesting. But structurally, it's a mess. It skips huge portions of the story, assumes you already know the characters, and jumps straight into the apocalypse without building up to it. The thematic ideas in the OVA are strong, but the film doesn't lay enough groundwork for those ideas to fully land. There's a major gap between a good concept and a well-constructed narrative. The OVA has really good themes. The story clearly wants to explore things like how fragile Akira Fudo's humanity can be, the loss of hope after Miki Makimura dies, the demonic rage embodied by Amon, and humanity's descent into paranoia and violence. Those are all solid ideas and very much in line with the spirit of Devilman, but the problem is it lacks a setup. For those themes to work emotionally, the audience needs certain foundations. For example, a stronger relationship between Akira and Miki that is actually shown to us before her death, a clearer escalation of humanity's collapse, and hints of Amon's presence before the final conflict, and a gradual emotional breakdown for Akira. The OVA tries to show Akira's internal struggle, but mostly centers around Miki's death. In the original story, Akira's conflict comes from much more than that. It's about his compassion for humanity, his struggle with the demonic power inside him, and watching the world collapse in paranoia and violence. Because the OVA skips most of that build-up, the emotional foundation for Akira's breakdown feels underdeveloped. And back to one of the biggest issues I want to address, that I ranted about for nearly 10 minutes. The OVA seems to assume the audience already has emotional attachment to Miki and Tari from the manga. So instead of properly building their relationship with Akira in the present story, it relies heavily on the brutalities or deaths to create impact. But graphic violence alone cannot replace emotional build-up. Outside of a photo, one mention of Akira being her stepbrother, and a few brief scenes, the OVA barely gives these characters enough presence for their deaths to feel genuinely devastating on their own. The scene is well directed and genuinely unsettling on a surface level, but doesn't carry emotional weight. Moments like the bus argument try to show things escalating, but the lack of reaction from other people makes it feel insignificant. So when the story suddenly jumps to brutal murder, it doesn't feel like a natural progression, it just feels abrupt. The atmosphere works, but the characters and build-up don't, so the impact ends up feeling hollow. The OVA expects you to already care deeply about Akira's moral collapse, Miki's emotional center of the story, humanity turning into a violent mob, and the tragedy of devils and humans destroying each other. But it relies so much on the manga that it feels empty without it. Yes, I get it. The OVA needs the original manga to make sense and give context. It acts as supplementary material to the original manga and to the Amon manga. But even then, for an OVA like this, even supplementary material still needs enough internal emotional structure to function as a dramatic work on its own. Especially when it's asking the audience to emotionally invest in grief, tragedy, psychological collapse, moral horror, and Akira's breaking point. Emotional storytelling still needs support inside the adaptation itself. Let's go into reality. At the time of this OVA's release, the manga was nearly 30 years old. The original Devilman manga was from the early 70s. So not every viewer would have the original perfectly fresh in their head. I bet some people only vaguely remember the story even when they're watching this OVA. So if the adaptation leans too heavily on pre-existing emotional memory, weak spots become more noticeable. Yes, we know who Miki is through flashbacks, so the problem with that is the flashbacks are good, but the problem is flashbacks can deepen the attachment, but they usually cannot replace the initial attachment. If you did not have the original attachment in the first place, they mean nothing. You're in the middle of chaos and they suddenly ask you to emotionally invest in past moments. Difference is flashbacks say this was important, but a present day scene would be like, This is important, and you're watching it slip away. That's why I feel like this issue would have been fixed by just having one scene of Miki and Akira interacting, like the one I mentioned earlier in the manga. The way they did this just does not work. Especially when Miki feels like cheap kill count fodder in a horror movie. Also for the humans that kill her. What makes a human so deadly is not that they're terrifying monsters, but they are terrified monsters. They genuinely think that Miki's evil and needs to die. They did this because they were consumed by fear and went insane from demons taking over, not because they were psychopaths. That's what Go Nagai is trying to show. That fear and other things can corrupt people under deadly circumstances. But here the way just come, instead of feeling like the result of society collapsing to paranoia, it really just feels like a random home invasion by a couple of psychopaths. When in the original story, the murder of Miki was meant to symbolize the absolute breaking point of humanity. Because we haven't seen the paranoia actually grow properly, these scenes do not automatically communicate society's collapse into genocidal paranoia. Things like robbery, street violence, and public arguments, acting angry on transit are unpleasant, but they're still recognizable by ordinary crime, social disorder that can happen in any large city under stress. They needed better escalation cues. The OVA has the atmosphere and horror direction, but often relies on implication and shorthand so heavily that some emotional/logical transitions become underdeveloped. I understand this is a 40-minute OVA that had limitations, but honestly, I think even an extra 10 minutes could have fixed a lot of its issues. Just a short scene between Akira and Miki at the beginning, along with a few moments showing Akira struggling to contain Amon, would have added so much more emotional weight. The OVA has all the right ideas, it just doesn't give them enough time to develop. You may be asking, why am I complaining about Miki's death so much when the OVA is about Akira versus Amon? This scene is supposed to be a major turning point. Miki's death is kind of the backbone for this OVA's turning point, a major event that happens and is supposed to be important that she's seen in flashbacks. It's what the emotional wave Akira's collapse hinges on. It's the emotional foundation for everything that follows. So if this doesn't hit, then Akira's struggle loses a lot of its weight. It's not just that Miki doesn't have enough screen time. It's how she's used in the scenes she does have. She's physically present, but she doesn't feel fully there. She doesn't really drive any interactions or influence what's happening. So she comes off more as a passive presence rather than an active character. That's part of why her death doesn't hit as hard. It feels like we're losing someone in the story never fully brought to life in the present. And yes, the killers do explain why they killed her, because she was living with Akira, who is nothing but a demon to these guys. But it just feels like a justification thrown in after the fact, so it doesn't really work as well. When the manga, it's shown why exactly they wanted to kill her. And she feels a lot more present and aware of the threat. People here just feel like generic slasher villains. When the horror Devilman isn't crazy people exist, but rather ordinary people can become monstrous under the right conditions. I really like the idea of Amon versus Akira, with showing Akira's humanity's breaking, that Amon represents a violent demon inside him, and that grief and despair weakens his control. That's all solid conceptually, but the issue is the emotional bridge connecting these ideas isn't strong enough. And it needed more build-up, because Devilman usually establishes that the Devilman have control over the demon inside them. So Amon breaking free should feel abnormal and frightening, but because the build-up is not really there, so it just feels like the plot says Amon is back now, instead of Akira psychologically collapsing and losing control. I'll repeat myself here. The OVA has strong ideas and genuinely powerful moments, but rushes past the emotional, psychological build-up it needed to fully support them. Because scenes like Miki's death and society's collapse don't feel fully earned. The emotional weight of Akira's breakdown and Amon's emergence loses impact too. The spectacle and horror are there, but the connective tissue holding everything together feels underdeveloped. I'll give the OVA this. It has awesome atmosphere, great action, it's very shocking, and it has awesome art done by the late Yasushi Nirasawa, well known for his work on the Kamen Rider series. And it's got some really good voice actors, like Tomokazu Seki as Ryo Asuka/Satan. He voiced Domo Ninji Gundam. And the legendary Akio Otsuka as Amon, who is also the Japanese voice for Solid Snake. Rie Tanaka as Miko. And Motoko Kumai as Tari. It's genuinely frustrating. I really want to like this OVA, but it had so many small issues that just destroyed it for me. If you made it this long, thank you for watching. God, this video took forever to make. Editing this beat the fuck out of me. So, see y'all later next time, I guess.